Hello, welcome. July is slated to be quite an intense month. And so today we're going to talk about not just what is likely to be invited through the cosmos, but also how we can choose to respond to that and the role that that's playing in our greater evolutionary purpose as we grow as human beings, personally and collectively, because this month is really going to start a new way of being in the world for each of us, yes, but for the world as a whole. Now, if you're familiar with my work, you know that I also do human design. And in human design, we have this global shift happening in February of 2027 after over 400 years of a certain global frequency now shifting into another. I've talked about this at length in my other videos, but July really feels like a time where we're going to start seeing this shift happen. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get later into July, but or as we get later into this video about later July. The thing that I'm feeling into this month again and again is this feeling of returning to what is essential. As the world gets louder and louder, we are being called to have more clarity and to really discern what truly matters in our lives. And I think inevitably this is going to move a lot of us towards a simplification of our lives. And this is not minimalism as an aesthetic, it's essentialism as an ethos for our lives. Simplifying really entails looking at your life and seeing what you really want to put your energy into. And, with Mercury retrograde for most of this month in Cancer, a lot of us are going to be revisiting and reviewing what we have put our emotional energy into, what we have invested our minds in, and whether or not that actually matches up with what we value in life. And for some of us, this might bring kind of a harsh reality check of why certain things are happening in our lives, why certain things are not happening in our lives, and how we can start to bridge that gap. This month is almost going to require restraint and discernment simply because there is so much happening in the world. Now, before we get too much deeper here, I want to ask you, how was your June? What happened? Did anything surprise you? Was anything more difficult or easier than you thought it would be? If you listened to my June video, did it resonate? It's interesting because I called June an exhale, and being that me putting it that way wasn't saying that necessarily everything in June was going to be easy, but that in comparison to what I saw coming, it was going to be the exhale and our ability to kind of go inward and discern what really matters, because now the volume's getting turned up. And as the volume gets turned up, there will be so much more information coming your way, so many more things to be anxious about. And yet it's like with all this information, we're still starving for wisdom about what we need to focus on, wisdom about what we truly want our lives to be, who we want to be when we take away the noise of the outside world and come back to the one thing that we can control, which is ourselves, our internal world. I invite you to even think about July as being an easy month, not because the things that are going to be happening in the transits that we're going to briefly go over will be inviting, but rather your perception, because it is truly your perception that creates your reality. This is not to diminish the events that happen in our world, but to gain your power back about how you live in this world day to day in this present moment. And I think this month is really going to invite you to take a deeper look at that. Now, for July, I actually have two live gatherings that I'm doing, and I'm excited to share them with you. The first one's actually happening on July 5th, where it will be a donation-based somatic gathering. We'll do a somatic practice. I'll channel some messages, take some questions afterwards if we have time. And I was really inspired to do something like this by my recent meditation retreat that I did in Massachusetts. Temperance. This is the card of alchemy. This is the card of integration rather than balance, integrating the heart and the mind. Interesting. As I'm talking about meditation. I practice Vipassana, which is a type of meditation from the Theravada Buddhist tradition. And in Theravada Buddhism, their teachings are based off of a Pali word called dana, which means generosity. And the teachers are paid based off of donations only. Now, I've done multiple Vipassana retreats. I've worked with many Vipassana or Theravada Buddhist teachers, so I'm very familiar with this. However, at my most recent retreat, one of the teachers got emotional as she was talking about how much trust it takes to live her life in that way. And I remember thinking, what a revolutionary way to live in our times. To trust that other people will donate, even though they're giving 2 weeks of their lives, and some people might not donate at all, or some people might give $20 because that's all they can afford, and we have to pay for room and board and food and all these things, but the teachers themselves don't get paid unless they are donated to. So I was inspired to do something similar, and I was inspired to do it on July 5th because that is after this Mars-Uranus conjunction. We're still definitely an orb of that during that day, but where things can get a little crazy. So obviously we'll talk about that. The other one is July 19th. And this will be a little bit longer because it's going to be pertaining to my Mapping the Shadow course that I just refinished. And talking about essentialism and simplification, I actually took all of my workshops off my website. I took 2 of them and I extracted the parts that mattered the most in my opinion and created a course from it of mapping the shadow. And it includes shadow work, where I find the shadows in astrology, human design, and then also somatics. But really what this is showing you is how to see more clearly, how to see your obstacles and struggles from a different perspective using my framework that really has been in the works for 17 years. So that comes with a live call on July 19th. It also comes with the ability to send me your charts and your current struggles to be used as a demo. So I'm not doing one-on-one readings. So this is pretty much as close as we can get to that right now. Let's talk about July. I started doing these monthly readings a few months ago, and as a 3/5 in human design, it's just been an experiment of how I want to do this. And in honor of what I'm feeling this month is really going to call us to do with this discernment and restraint and wisdom rather than just information, even though I do have some of the astrology here, I really am going to just focus on some of the themes that are coming up and leave the more detailed interpretations to the other brilliant astrologers and human design readers who that's their magic. As you can see here, we've got some things happening this month. Really a lot of movement happened at the end of June, on June 29th and 30th. Jupiter moved into Leo. This is a screenshot of the sky in mid-July, but Jupiter has moved into Leo and Mercury is retrograde in Cancer. And Mercury being retrograde in Cancer all month, I mean, most of June, Mercury was in Cancer all of July. Mercury's going to be in Cancer, and most of it it's going to be retrograde. And when Mercury goes retrograde, it is going into the unconscious world. Yes, it is about reviewing and rethinking and redoing. So there's going to be a lot of that as well. And it's going to make us have to kind of go deeper. This is really why I wanted to have Mapping the Shadows available for you guys before this Mercury retrograde, so it could be a resource for you during this time to not just see your struggles, but see the reasoning underneath them. Why, with the root of why you keep repeating these patterns. And I think this is going to be a major theme with Mercury in Cancer of like, why do I keep doing this? And it feels like it's going to be very emotional because it's in a very watery sign. And so a lot of grief might come up, and a lot of pain might come up. And really it's our job to try to shift our perspective to see that this is a part of our growth process, and this is where we are kind of moving towards, because this month is really going to be asking you who you want to continue being, and how that is being reflected or not being reflected in your day-to-day actions. As we see pretty early on, we've got Venus moving into Virgo, and Venus does not like being in Virgo. That's on July 9th. Venus does not like being in Virgo. Venus is in its fall in Virgo. And then it's also going to immediately conjunct the South Node at 0 degrees of Virgo. And for the first few days, it's really going to be a tight thing there. So Virgo is very practical, and Virgo is very critical. On the positive side, it can be discerning, but when it's conjunct the South Node, it's really going to ask us to really look at the ways that we are relating to ourselves in the world from these overly analytical, overly perfectionistic ways that are keeping us in a kind of relationship with ourselves that is constantly trying to fix ourselves or maybe fix other people. I think one of the biggest perspective shifts that really can help us in our lives is to stop treating ourselves like a project that needs to be fixed. And Venus and Virgo can often do that with themselves and other people. And there can be a lot of beautiful wisdom that can come from this placement for us during this time. And if you have this natally, and I believe truly that whenever we have a debilitated planet, we are learning more from that planet than when it's exalted. Because it's making it more apparent, because it's painful. And we as humans tend to listen to pain. I work with a lot of people when I'm doing one-on-one work that have chronic pain, and myself included. I had chronic pain for many, many years, having to admit that like sometimes the body is just trying to get your attention, and you won't listen unless it's screaming. And so you're kind of training the body to become loud without knowing it, right? It's an unconscious choice. So these sorts of motivations are really important to look at this month, these unconscious motivations. I skipped over the thing that most people are talking about this month, which is Mars Uranus. And Mars Uranus on July 3rd, 4th is going to be a lot personally and collectively. America has Mars and Uranus in Gemini. So over the next several years, with Uranus being in Gemini till 2033, we are going to have to reckon with this energy, with Mars meeting Uranus multiple times. And this is kind of the first of that. And Uranus, I've talked about this in previous videos, Uranus is generally a time of disruption and war for the United States. And Mars is an indicator of war for mundane astrology. So this could play out in so many different ways, but I think the way that we're going to be feeling it, regardless of what happens, is an inundation of information coming at us from all different sides, and that really keeping our nervous system, which is ruled by Mercury in medical astrology, it's going to be very, very difficult to feel stable and grounded. Actually, the donation-based call that we're doing, I'm calling it finding stability within times of change, because Mars Uranus is it can be kind of an aggressive energy. Mars can be aggressive. It can be courageous as well. And here's the thing about Uranus is that Uranus by its nature is very unpredictable. It is sudden, shocking events. It's difficult to know how it's going to play out. But one thing is that Uranus is electricity and it's in the sign of our nervous system. So that's already affecting us and dispersing our attention in so many different ways. And then we've got Mars here now. And Mars, when it comes into Gemini, can really bring some inflammation, number one, to the body. But a lot of this is because it's like Mars wants to move and Gemini is the mind and perception. And the movement energy tends to happen more in the mental realm. And this can be difficult because our minds are already just like, and then now Mars comes in and just like amps that up. It's like watching how we speak around these times, because angry speech might be very likely around this time. War of ideas as well, a lot of really intense ideology. And Mercury is actually going to be in gate 60 much of the retrograde. And gate 62 is a very detail oriented place, but it's Mercury in Cancer retrograde. So you don't have all of the answers. And yet if you start acting and speaking as you are the person who is right, you're going to find that it's probably going to come back at you. So having a lot of patience during this time, really reconnecting to your body, reconnecting to stillness is going to help you discern, do I have all the information here before saying what I need to say? If you notice, Virgo here and Gemini are both ruled by Mercury. And what's Mercury doing all month? It is retrograde in Cancer. So until the July 23rd, when Mercury goes direct, the ruler of the South Node, Venus, Mars, and Uranus is retrograde in the sign of Cancer, in this emotionally watery realm. So it's like all of this energy wants to move forward, and Mercury is controlling that energy, and it's saying, hey, hold on, there's something you're not getting yet. You're trying to rush forward, and there's something you don't get quite yet. So the invitation here is to not resist the movement forward, but to recognize that there's something deeper at play here. I talked about this briefly with my Jupiter South Node in Leo video, because Jupiter in Leo, as it had just moved to Leo at the end of the month in June, is really expansive in so many ways. And then as you see, we have the South Node moving into Leo on July 26th. So that's going to color Jupiter much differently. And I think in the beginning of this transit, we might feel that Jupiterian desire to expand, and it's going to feel really great. But as the year goes on, especially as we get into November, December, we've got this Jupiter, Mars, South Node conjunction. And then Mars is going to go retrograde in Virgo through Leo. And there's just a lot of energy that's going to ask us to like refine and release the Leonian energies, a sense of self that has been actually holding us back. So excessive pride, excessive ego. And I think July is really like the training grounds for that. It's asking you to, yes, feel expansive and take whatever that spotlight that is being given to you. Although the ruler of Leo is the sun, and the sun's going to be in Cancer for most of this month. So the first few weeks of this month really just do feel kind of like a continuation of this inward energy, but the world is going to get louder and the nervous system is going to be a little bit more impacted. As we move into the second half of the month and things start shifting, the sun moves into Leo on July 23rd, the same day that Mercury goes direct. Then we've got the nodal change on July 26th, sun opposite Pluto this time as well. And then as you've noticed here, kind of left it vague where we have these outer planets, Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus in this really beautiful alignment. As you can see here, we got Jupiter opposite Pluto, which is not as beautiful. But then we've got this named after Andre Barbal, who really deeply studied the mathematics of cycles between the outer planets. I mean, his work is revolutionary to astrology. And so we named this basket after him, and we see Neptune here at 4 degrees and Uranus here at 4 degrees. And so there's this beautiful trine here, beautiful trine here. And then we've got sextile, 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 finished with an opposition. So obviously the opposition is going to be the thing that is holding the tension, which I think is actually beautiful, because when we have no tension, there is less of an impetus for growth. So we need some friction in our lives to say, you know what, I can't keep doing this. And so things are coming to a head collectively and personally. And I briefly talked about this Jupiter Pluto opposition in my Jupiter video as well, Jupiter and Leo video. But essentially this feels like Barbal said that this is going to be a significant turning point in mankind's evolution. And he said that it is going to be very, very beautiful. As I mentioned with human design, a lot of people talk about the shift that's coming up. It's really moving into personal sovereignty and spirituality and all these really beautiful, beautiful things. They talk about it, and sometimes we forget that the birth of something new is very painful. It's very painful, and it can feel and look extraordinarily difficult. It's a forceful process. And so this birth of civilization, Andre was not like, yeah, it's going to be just like really cute. It's going to be really cute energy. It was more like, yeah, this is a turning point, but it's going to require some integration, of course, because we've got this opposition of the collective will and the personal will. You're really going to be challenged, especially the end of the month, because this is really active from like July 17th to 21st. It's really going to be there for the upcoming years, but it's really active during this time. It's not one of those transits that we see like one time and then it's over. But then we got Sun opposite Pluto, of course. And then once again, this node's moving into Leo and Aquarius, a lot of air, a lot of fire energy. And this is very masculine energy. And I think there's a reckoning happening with the masculine energy very deeply. And that the feminine is I don't like saying the word rising, but because it's not that masculinity needs to end, but there are cycles. And right now the masculine energy is being challenged because it has been used in a way that has been very painful by much of the collective and society. And so the feminine is rising in all of us. And actually projectors in human design have a lot to do with this. I'll talk about that in a different video, but there is a lot going on in our masculine nature. We are coming, and the masculinity is about things taking form. So when we talk about the feminine can in some ways be the receptive energy, and the masculinity is structure, but it's also what we have to pull upon to create something. And so why I find that to be important is that Jupiter and Leo opposing Pluto and Aquarius is really going to ask us, like, what are you creating in the world? And can you have some sovereignty there without losing your sense of service to the collective, to humanity, right? Aquarius is a very humanitarian sign. It's a very service-oriented sign. It is ruled by Saturn traditionally. There is going to be a lot of this like push-pull energy of what I want versus what I think the world needs or what the world wants me to become. And because we've got this energy in Cancer, the sun until the 23rd and Mercury the whole month, there is this emotional underpinning of like, why do I keep doing this? And why do I keep finding myself in these sorts of painful situations, coming down to like, what is essential here? And discerning that every single idea and thought that comes into the mind does not need to be acted upon. And every conversation, especially with this Mars and Gemini, once again, it's like every conversation that you want to have with every single person, it may not be necessary. I think one of the most beautiful things about spending 2 weeks in retreat is like I remember in the first day, something came up. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta talk to my boyfriend about this. We gotta talk about this. And then, I went and talked to one of the teachers. We had these meetings, and I was like, oh God, like I just need to talk to him. And she was just like, yeah, just see if that's still there. And a week in, I completely forgotten about it. This is actually one of the reasons why a lot of people have trouble like starting things and stopping things, because we just listen to the mind and we get thrown around and like same, and it's just constantly having to come to what matters, or there has to be something deeper than what the mind is telling you in that moment. And if you don't have that North Star, then life does kind of feel like you're thrashing about constantly. And I think this month is really going to ask you to sink deeper and deeper into what that North Star is for you right now, because it's always in fluctuation. It's always changing. But right now, what is it that you're really devoted to, right? Venus and Virgo is very devoted. And so as we enter into the last month of the nodes in Pisces and Virgo, we're being invited to really just notice, like, what is it that we're devoted to? Pisces and Virgo are very devotional and service oriented as well in different ways. And this emphasis on the North Node in Pisces has been just being, rather than having to prove yourself through how much work you do. A lot of times Virgo will prove themselves through service in a very task oriented way. And Pisces can do this as well, from an emotional standpoint, like holding a lot of space for people, or I don't want to listen to this. This isn't really healthy for me either. So they can definitely both have that in different ways. And also the North Node being in Pisces is kind of inviting us to grow here and just surrendering and allowing, in seeing that our worth comes from the fact that we exist in this present moment. And so how can we reconnect to that? Because Chiron is in Taurus and everything's moving into fire and air. So the one planet that we have in Earth sign is a wounded place, which is why I feel like I'm being called to offer this somatic practice in July as well, is to help you just see the mind, not to stop it, not to just to see how much the mind pulls us away. And that's another beautiful thing you realize when you are in retreat for even just a few days or a week, is you're like, wow, I don't have my phone or anything out externally. I'm not reading, I'm not writing. I had some cards drop, so my little dexterous toes, dexterous? I don't know. Oh, interesting. Queen of Pentacles and the Six of Swords. Yeah, see, this is so amazing, because this was actually the bottom of the deck when I was just preparing for this video. This is moving away from chaos, moving toward more peace. And this is really something that's being invited to us. And then Queen of Pentacles, she is grounded. She is tuned in to her body, and she is of service. The Queen of Pentacles is of service. She loves taking care of the people around her, but she doesn't do that in a way that abandons herself, that abandons her own needs. Look, she doesn't look like she's living in scarcity. She's rich in abundance all around her. Nature, a pentacle, beautiful, beautiful throne. And yet she is still able to be of service and take care of the people around her. So really the path to integration here, to alchemy of what is happening, is to learn to come back to what truly matters and to find your own path to peace, even in times of conflict. And what does that mean that your life is, what does that make your life look like day to day? I think that's the biggest thing, is people are going to start realizing that what they want in life and how they're moving through life day to day, the disparity between that is going to become more obvious, and it's going to become more painful. And that's a gift. That's a gift, that life is trying to pull you in a certain direction. And in order to see that gift, you might have to do some deep emotional, deep unconscious work to recognize why that disparity exists. Because I think it's been in your awareness for a while. Like, I want to be here, but I keep doing this thing, or I want to be here, but I keep being stuck here. That part has been in your awareness, but now you're being asked to look at why. And I just want to get one more card here for advice. It's kind of just seeing, where can we lean into right now for the month of July? King of Cups. Yeah. King of Cups is, the kings are masculine and then the cups are feminine. So we've got the masculine energy moving into the feminine. And this is very much, I think, asking us to have clarity and discernment around our emotional natures. Mercury in Cancer is emotional. Mercury retrograde in Cancer is emotional. Sun in Cancer is emotional. You are being asked to learn how to feel your emotions, and if necessary, to articulate them in a way that isn't diminishing the other person or yourself or abandoning yourself, right? The king stands strong in his ability to say, hey, this is making me feel this way. But it's not a youthful energy of like, man, you know, why are you doing this? Not doing this. And it's very mature. And when Mercury is retrograde, yeah, conversations can kind of go awry. And also, I find that that doesn't mean that we don't have them. It just means that we allow there to be a little bit of space for them to not be complete or finished. So coming to a conclusion during this retrograde, especially with Mercury in gate 62, and then it goes back to, I think, gate 53, but a lot of time it's going to be in 62 about the details that you do not have. So keep things open-ended, speak with clarity, but not in this way that don't allow the ego to come in and say, I am right, I have to be right in this, because maybe you're not, and maybe you're not seeing the full picture. One of the things about gate 62 is that it is connected to 17, and we actually have Neptune in gate 17, and gate 17 is the right eye in human design, but it's connected to the left brain. So there is a sense of like details, logic, order, right? That's the left brain, the masculine side of our brain. And so it's really great at pulling things apart and saying, okay, this is this concept. People who have 1762, I have it in my birth chart. Let me know if you have it in your birth chart. It is, I have a chart calculator on my website if you don't know your human design as well. But the 1762 is really great for people who can take really complex, abstract ideas and bring them into coherent details, or to teach them to people and say, take something that doesn't make sense and say, hey, this is the part that matters. However, gate 11 is the left eye and the right mind. And gate 11 is better at seeing the whole picture. It's the more unconscious side of the brain, the right side of the brain with feminine. So it may not always have the details correct, but it does have a better holistic understanding of what's happening. So the reason I'm bringing this up, which by the way, I also have the 11. So if you have the 11, I have the 1156. If you have that as well, let me know in down below, because that is actually a gate of a storyteller versus like a teacher who tells you the details of the facts. So they're different energies, but they're both necessary. They can work together in some way. Oh, how funny. As I'm making this video, the moon is in gate 11. So that's really interesting. But we've got Jupiter in gate 56. So even though this energy is fleeting, it's coming through right now to remind you that you don't have the whole picture, even though you think you have the logic, the details, the this, that. There's some reviewing that needs to happen here. And last month, I was really looking at Mercury as the planet, and it's kind of coming through again, just because of all of those placements that we have in Mercury ruled signs that are asking us. So wherever you have Gemini and Virgo in your chart, it is truly asking you to like chill out there. If things are not going as planned, if things there are like super chaotic, which there might be this month, don't take it as like a personal attack on you, because Mercury in Cancer can be quite protective of the self and the emotional world. Sun in Cancer as well. Don't take it as an attack on you. And yeah, see, like the King of Cups doesn't take it as an attack, right? He's very mature. He understands that people have their own emotional world, that life is, life is not coming at him. He's really standing in his and sitting really in his sovereignty of like, yeah, this is how I feel. And that's okay if you don't agree. And, so it really feels like this is things may be falling apart. And in that process, the invitation is to find, okay, if things are falling apart, that gives me a clear idea of what actually matters to me, what is essential to my life and to where I want to place my energy. The question this month that I wrote down is, what can I remove in July so I have enough space to recognize what is truly essential to me? This new sense of self that we're gaining with Jupiter in Leo and Sun in Leo, it's not going to, it's not asking, it's not okay for it to be flimsy, right? That's the Jupiter in Leo video. I said the self you can't fake. So whatever is being constructed right now, it feels like it's kind of underneath the surface. Whatever is being constructed, it needs room to breathe. And so it requires a stripping of our values, of how we move day to day, of how we speak, of how we think. So once again, July 5th, I have a gathering. I'm going to have these linked all below. July 19th is another gathering for mapping the shadows. If you get the course between now and then, you also get the opportunity. Number one, it's a introductory price as well, but you also get to send in your charts so that I can use them in the live demo and also as demos to put in the course so that you can have multiple examples of how we can start seeing beneath the symptoms of what we're struggling with and deeper into why it keeps happening again and again and again. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to hear how your June went and your thoughts on July. I'll see you next time.